Hey, it's Amethyst Virgo. This video is about the 12th house and introversion. So no, you do not have to have 12th house placements to be an introvert. You can be you can be an extrovert and have a few 12th house placements, right? Of course, the chart interpretation would help us understand more about why that is. But anytime you have 12th house placements, there's a part of you that is a little hidden. There's a part of you that requires a little bit more isolation, or that is a little bit harder to attain. Whatever's in your 12th house, it's a little bit harder for people to tap into that part of you and see it or understand it. And that can be a hidden talent. I've said before, 12th house energy can feel trapped a little bit, but it also can benefit you in terms of if you have negative things there, sometimes it affects you, but not other people. So the 12th house doesn't always create as much tension with other people, but you do have to watch out. I did the other video where I talked about 12th house placements and people feeling molded, like people want to mold you. That when people see that you're not extroverted, or people see that you are not as forward about who you are, they assume they need to take you on and mold you. And that's not always the case. Some people are just happy and content being as they are, and they don't need to put on this whole show and presentation to show the world that. So I do have that video if you want to check it out. I do have a 12th house playlist that talks about that. The 12th house is a very nuanced house, and I do like to deconstruct some of the myths around it being a horrible house where it's suffering and things of that nature. But 12th house has a certain obligation and duty to align itself to its higher self. So there is a little bit of truth in that. Traditionally, the 12th house being about isolation, imprisonment, hospital, confinement, right? Being away from society. And then we look at it in terms of, well, knowing now what we know, especially when we think of things such as mental health and we think of healing and those types of topics, that the 12th house can be a place where you best work alone, or you work better, or you need time to recharge away from the busy world. You need time to be in your own inner world. Think about that with introversion. Introversion is not simply hating people and hating to socialize. I'm like, is an introvert who can be extroverted about things I care about. So personality, not extra. I'm not an extrovert. In my work ethic, I'm an extrovert in terms of something needs to get done by me. I'm going to make sure it's as good as it can be. Mars and Leo in the 12th house. But the thing you want to note here is that, you are learning and processing how to utilize that energy away from others, undisturbed. That is the beauty about the 12th house. You are not, it's interesting because it's universalism, right? It's 12th house, the gateway to spiritualism. It is a lot of different things in the 12th house. However, right? So there's a contradiction there where you're alone, but you're not really alone, right? If you are someone who is, deals with a lot of the unconscious and spiritualism, that's not a thing you own yourself, right? We don't own spiritualism. We have our own spiritual journey, but that we're connected to so many other people and things throughout time when we think of topics such as spiritualism, Pisces, Neptunian energy. Even if you want to think of the Sagittarius energy, Jupiter ruling Sagittarius, Jupiter being the original ruler Pisces, and that kind of Sagittarius is about the wisdom that we acquire, right, over time, and ancient wisdom and ancient knowledge and things of that nature. So when you look at those things, we know the 12th house is not just ours, but we on a physical plane can feel quite alone sometimes if we don't learn to direct our spiritual path. And because we're trying to figure that out, that can lead to a lot of alone time. Now, if your alone time is you doing meaningful things, it'll be beneficial to you. If your alone time is sulking and hating everything and hating everyone, that is where you get the lone suffering person that feels like the whole world is against them. That can be the pitfall of the 12th house if you're not careful. Whereas in its best state, 12th house placements, you are aware that you need to be away from people sometimes. That guess what? If I'm too extroverted, if I'm too into what everybody's doing, then I'm losing touch on what I'm really here to do. And that when we are, think about it. If you're always with people, if you're always doing something with other people, you're so influenced by that a lot of times you're missing the opportunities to do the 12th house things, which aren't contingent on performance. 12th house is not about attention, performance, and money, right? Now, you can get those things from what you do, of course, right? There are many people who are rich or famous that have 12th house placements. So this isn't about saying if you have 12th house placements, you're not able to accumulate those things. But it is about you first have to land there, especially if you have personal planets in the 12th house. That is more personal things you need to work through. If you have outer planets in your 12th house, that can be more how you're connecting to people and ideas and concepts outside of yourself. There are more of those experiences that you're encountering. Whereas if your sun is there, there's some work you have to do on identity, on your traits, on really bringing those things forward. And so you're going to have to go through a journey alone. You're going to have to process who you are away from everybody. That is your true self. You, especially people with sun there, that is your true self. What you show everybody else is where you've adapted what you need to be for those people. And so I do say, like, especially if you have personal planets in the 12th house, everyone is not always fully going to see who you really are. Even if maybe you're a person who maybe you don't have the sun in the 12th house, but you have your sun is conjunct your sun or your ascendant your ascendant is conjunct a planet in the 12th house, or your sun is in the first house and it conjuncts a planet in the 12th house. There's always going to be a part of you that's a little bit unseen that you have to thoroughly know yourself, right? And sometimes it can feel like an alien experience that you're here, but you know that you're here to do something different, or that you're here in a way that is not based on this just materialism. Now, don't get me wrong. We all want, we all have to, you function in the society. You need money. You need to buy things. You have to pay for things. You have to work. We all partake in that. But at the end of the day, you know that you're also here for a higher purpose and a higher reason. And I'm not saying people who don't have 12th house placements are not. I am speaking to the people who have felt what I felt before, and you have these placements. And I'm trying to help you explain and understand the fact that introversion is going to be really helpful when you are creating something on your own, because it's going to have your own imprint on it. Okay? And so the more you are alone, it then helps you know what matters and what doesn't matter. You learn on your own, or you do things on your own accord, or you create things on your own, or in isolation. Even if you love your family, you love your friends, you're going to need that time to process life. It is a lot for 12th house folks to process life, especially the people who have a lot of oppositions from the 6th to the 12th house, and they have squares or things going on. It takes you have to process. You have to sometimes even physically take yourself out of certain environments. You know when it's time to leave. Maybe you're not a 12th house person, but maybe you're Pisces somewhere, right? You know when it's time to leave. You know when you're at an event, you're like, okay, I've been here for 2 hours. I got to go. That is your cue to recharge. That is your cue to get up and go. And of course, that can be weird, because you don't want to be that person that's always, oh, I'm never fun. I'm never hanging out. I'm never doing this or that. I do think it depends on what stage of life you're in. When I was younger, I would hang out with all types of nights with my friends, right? Because, you're young, you're now formally into adulthood, but you're young, you're still young and you're experiencing things or whatever. And you're experiencing that. But once you've experienced things and you know who you are, and you're fully, dealing with certain things that are more permanent in your life, you kind of can retract a little bit, and then you are more loyal to how you function. So if you're introverted, it is about being loyal to how you best perform. You may not perform well constantly having to be performing for someone, or constantly having to be at somebody's whim, or constantly having to be around people all the time. For you, that's draining, because you need time to process your own emotions. You need time to process your own thoughts. Okay? And you might have great conversations with people. And the 12th house introversion or energy does not mean you don't like people. It means you like certain people, right? Or you might even be here to connect spiritually with someone or some people. And those surface level relationships are never going to be enough for you. Now, it depends on other placements in the chart. Some people may have placements where you are going to have more casual friendships, or you might have a lot of acquaintances in your life. But for some people, those surface level things are never going to be enough. And when you have to go put on that mask every day and go here and be there, you're eventually going to need to retreat to something that is more meaningful and purposeful. And that's going to be your own personal space, your own inner world. You're very imaginative. What do you do with that imagination? Do you write? Do you create? What do you do? Right? Do you just simply have something you enjoy doing because it puts you in your own world? When you have 12th house placements, you have to be loyal to your inner world, whatever that is. You have to, especially if you are here on a mission where you're visiting Earth. You're here on Earth and you sense there's something beyond Earth, but I'm here, right? Okay, I gotta do this, I gotta pay bills, I gotta go to this, I gotta take my kids here, I gotta do that. But you have to have your happy place. Or you become that long, suffering 12th house person who feels the whole world is out to get them, and because you're allowing life to mold you instead of you taking experience from life and then going to retreat and saying, you know what is it that I want from life, and where's my happy place? You know, there are people who are just really good in their imagination. There are people who like to daydream. There are people, your daydreams, some people's daydreams are a replica of what they've experienced before in other lifetimes. Again, depends on how deep you want to go with this. Some people do believe in, like, there's parallel universes, and some people like pay attention to the things you daydream about. That's a whole different conversation. But thinking about the 12th house energy is important for you to simply learn how you are going to function when you are not having to appease other people. You will not be typical. You might do all the typical things. You're married, you got kids, you got a job, you got this, you got that, but you have to be loyal to your own inner world. You're always going to need something that's yours. And something that inspires you, something that moves you. And the difference, you'll know that it's yours. This is different than like 5th house placements. You're not performing this. It is not a duty. It's not an obligation. 6th house. It is not something you owe someone else. 7th house, right? Like, in terms of like your partnership, you know what I mean? And you can go up and down the list of all the houses and what they mean. But 12th house, it doesn't have time limits. It is something you go to do that is your creation. It is something, a world that you've created. And and again, I don't mean to disassociate from reality. That's not what I mean when I say your world. It's up to you what that is, right? But it can be something positive that reinforces you. It's something positive that helps you connect to the spiritual side of yourself, the side of yourself where you don't have to constantly be at the whims of society or what other people need you to be. And again, there's a longer conversation we can have about this, but I did want to just drop that note about introversion, and just how you can hopefully navigate that.